Hello, and welcome to another video. This one's going to be relatively short. I'm going to talk about something that is a problem for grouped PvP. Typically, you're losing your buff quite frequently if you're playing, let's say you're playing Devil Marauder with a friend, and you go into a war zone and you see that neither of you have your warrior buff or your Jedi Knight buff. You're like, that's weird. Now you don't have a way to buff yourself. Well, with a guild, if you have a high enough guild and you've done unlocked the command room and then the forward command room or whatever it's called, I'll show you in a second, you can get this thing called Omni Magnification, which is basically a class buff. If I was missing any of my buffs, it would replace it with a 60-minute buff that's basically just like class buffs, which is really cool. This is something that we don't currently have in the game. So if you get the forward command room, so you have to unlock the command room, and then you get the forward command room, which will cost you 10 command frameworks. Very expensive. It's like 8 billion if you wanted to buy that flat out right now, at least on my server. Probably don't recommend that, but if you're in a big enough guild, maybe you could probably swing by and be like, hey, can we get this? Or, if it's PvP guild, this is something important. If you're playing in groups in your PvP guild, you probably want to consider getting this because this will allow your players to not lose their buffs, basically. And buffs are pretty important. And what they would do, every player that's in that guild, they would go down to guild, and then they would see the passes here. As this is active, you can just go ahead and click on your bars. But the problem is that when you transfer between instances or whatever, it'll remove it off your bars. So you basically always just have to go to the guild panel, pop it like that, or drag it back on your bar and pop it. So do keep that in mind. And if you're not in a big guild or you don't want to be in a guild and you don't think that your guild's actually going to bother getting this, which is completely reasonable, in most content this is not an issue, but in PvP it is an issue. So to give you a idea of like what you're actually missing when you don't have your buffs, for example, this is melee range, force, and tech, bonus damage, and healing. This is 350 bonus melee damage. That's a lot of bonus damage. For example, basic 328 with purple ox to 340 with gold ox. The bonus damage gain is about 300-ish there. So that's well, I'm not saying like 340, I'm talking about like 340 min max for PvP without abusing the matrix cube. The matrix cube is bugged right now, by the way. Probably not the time to mention that, but regardless. Then 5% crit chance, that's just really good, right? And then endurance, not as important, but it does up your survivability. And if you have any percent healing, which this class does, and I'm actually taking the talent for it, that 1% heal is a little bit bigger because I have more health. So it is kind of useful. And then lastly, I think one of the more important ones is that mastery is increased by 5%. That's so, but it increases your internal and elemental damage reduction by 10%. That is huge because a lot of damage is yellow damage, and a lot of damage is just these two damage types. So having some damage reduction towards that allows you to be more tanky. And if you're missing those buffs, bam, you just apply it. But the alternative method right now is to leave the group before you set the pop. This will prevent any chance of you losing your buffs. And it is very tedious, but in case you ever do forget and you have the opportunity to get this, I would recommend just using that, and it will save you a lot of time. Again, if you can't afford it, you're not a guild that'll probably do it. Just leave the group before you set the pop. Don't have to deal with this problem anymore. I plan on having a PvP wishlist kind of series coming up here soon for 7.2. The first idea that I have, which I've been thinking about for over a year now, is to have defense chance rework. I will start off with that one. I've been thinking about that idea for a very long time. And I think I've covered pretty much every possible use case and exploitative ways that it could be used. So I've kind of came up with solutions of pretty much everything that could come with a problem with it. It is, ultimately just an ideal. I think at the end of the day, just removing accuracy as a stat in general would be the easiest way to solve a lot of these issues because it's a dated stat, and there's a reason why other games have stepped away from it. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, morning, whatever it is. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. We're happy to help.